Welcome to the B Movie Club. This week we're discussing the 1998 action crime thriller Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, starring Jason Statham, Vinnie Jones, directed by Guy Ritchie. For those of you joining us for the first time, each week on the B Movie Club we discuss guilty pleasures, forgotten classics, movies that if you look back in your life you'll remember with some fondness, but maybe they weren't the biggest hit of their day, if you know what I'm saying. Cult favorites, if you will. You can go ahead and go to our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club, and give us the big thumbs up. You can also go to our page on YouTube, Kevin D, that's me. Click the subscribe button, it's absolutely free. You can also reach me via Twitter, at KD9575, that's my initials, and my birthday, so keep that in mind next September. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. In this, four buddies. You have Eddie, you have Tom, you have Soap, you have Bacon, who are kind of hustlers in London. Each kind of minor criminals, if you will, kind of not doing anything bad, but maybe selling stolen merchandise on the side of the road. One is a chef. I guess that's not too illegal, depending on what spices you use, perhaps. Another one. Is a card player of some renown. So the fun starts when these guys pool their money to get £100,000 to participate in kind of this kind of black market card game. Because their buddy is like the best card player in the world. Not because he's particularly adept with the actual cards, but he can read people. He can tell if they're bluffing, things like that. Problem is, one of the people who's involved in this card game is this gangster named Hatchet Harry. He's just a bad guy. You don't want to get stuck with him. But in anticipation of playing cards against this kid, this gangster sets it up so that there's a hidden camera so that he'll have access to knowing what the cards are. Needless to say, the kid winds up not only losing the $100,000 that they brought, but also going in even deeper to the point where he actually owes this gangster £500,000. The gangster's henchman, who's nicknamed the Baptist because he drowns people, essentially tells them, you got 6 days to pay, and if you don't, I'm going to cut off a finger every day that I have to wait beyond that from you and all your buddies. So it's not just you. So now these guys, who are again kind of small-time crook types, are like, where are we going to get $500 in less than a week? So they live next door to this guy who's also kind of a gangster. He basically robs drug dealers. They know that that's what he does. He has a little gang that he does. He's basically Omar from The Wire, if you catch that reference. Him and his gang go around and they rob drug dealers. So their plan is to wait for them to rob this local pot dispensary, if you will, and then rob them and take that money to pay off the hatchet, if you will. So that sounds like a good plan. Meanwhile, Hatchet Harry also is like a collector of the things. In addition to being a gangster and the porn king of London, evidently, he also has an affinity for certain antiques. And a certain pair of antique shotguns are coming available. And rather than pay full freight, he wants them stolen. So he has his henchmen go hire some guys from out of town to go steal the guns. Okay? So there's a whole subplot about them stealing the guns, what's going on with that. Meanwhile, Harry also has another associate named Big Chris, who's essentially the guy who goes around and collects the money. He's the big extortion guy. Now, how this is different from what the Baptist does, I don't know. Evidently, they both get money from people. I'm not sure what the deal is. Big Chris, they've established, he basically goes and shakes people down to get the money to collect debts, essentially. Makes him interesting is he walks around with his little son, little Chris, who dresses the same way he is, and takes him on all his jobs, which doesn't seem very safe, if you ask me. Meanwhile, there's a lot of characters in this. Okay, it's like War and Peace. There's a lot of things going on. The guys who run the pot dispensary, okay, we were introduced to them. They evidently work for another gangster named Rory Breaker. So when the time comes for their pot when their pot gets stolen, when they get robbed, now they have to go talk to this gangster to find out who's stealing the money, who stole the weed, who stole the money. I don't want to spoil everything, because as I'm telling this, I'm realizing how convoluted and complicated this all is. There's a lot of layers. It's like an onion. Okay, it's like a parfait. There's a lot of layers. I don't want to spoil everything, but it is streaming instantly on Netflix. You have to rush out and see it. Essentially, if I could boil it down to one little piece, it's mainly about these 4 small-time crooks trying to get the $500,000 by robbing their neighbor to pay off another gangster. There it is. Write it down. Put that on the book jacket, okay? Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. This movie was definitely inspired by the Quentin Tarantino crime movies from the 90s. He took certain aspects of kind of the fun dialogue, the gangsters, the crime element, the threat of danger, and made it in kind of a fun little package. This was Guy Ritchie's first film. He financed it himself. He did it all very low budget. He was able to. One of the reasons why he was able to get it done was because he had a connection to this lady who was married to Sting from the Police. Sting plays a small role as Eddie's father who runs a bar. Okay. Basically, she is a film producer, so she was able to get Sting involved and was able to basically get the rest of the funding that they needed, basically because his name was on it. Because Guy Ritchie was an unknown. The rest of the cast was an unknown, more or less. Or he casted some people from other things, other crime thrillers in the past to kind of harken back to those other movies. Some of the people who went on to be big names, you have Jason Statham. This was his first movie. He plays Bacon, one of the small-time crooks. Obviously, he's a big star now. He was in all those Transporter movies. He was in The Italian Job, the new version. And he's, I guess, going to be in the new Fast and the Furious movie. So there you have that. Also, you have Vinnie Jones, who was a former soccer player, who had kind of a reputation of being kind of the bad boy of British soccer kind of thing. The night before they began filming, he was actually arrested for beating up his next-door neighbor. So there you have that. He went on to appear in a few things in the United States. He was in Gone in 60 Seconds. He was in Swordfish. He's in a few other things. This is both their film debuts, and they went on to have some measure of success in the United States. Another actor who was in this, his name Lenny McLean. He was a famous bare-knuckle boxer from England. He hired him to play the Baptist. Sad thing about him is he was feeling under the weather throughout the filming. And what they discovered is he had lung cancer that had metastasized into brain cancer. So he died before the movie was even released. So this movie was made. It had some success in the United Kingdom. It had more success in the United States, considering that it really didn't cost that much money to make. It made like $30 million, or 30 million pounds. I don't know which. 30 million francs, Deutschmarks, euros. I don't know what it was. They made some money, and it more than returned its investment, and kind of established Guy Ritchie as kind of a young up-and-coming British filmmaker. After this, he went on to make another crime movie called Snatch that had Brad Pitt and a few other larger celebrities. More recently, however, he did both of the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. So now he's very much a kind of a marketable star, or a marketable director. So there's that. which is nice. What else can I tell you about this movie? Other things about this movie, there's a scene where Nick the Greek, who's kind of this fence guy who also sells quasi-illegal things, where he's talking to the gangster Rory Breaker, and he tries to put his drink on the glass coffee table in front of him and drops it. That was actually an accident that occurred, but they liked it so much they found it funny, so they kept it in there. There's another scene towards the end of the movie where Tom is wearing kind of a wool cap. The reason for that is because throughout the entire movie he had very close cut hair, and they went back to reshoot some scenes and he had allowed his hair to grow out and he didn't want to have to cut it again, so they put a crazy wool cap on it. See all these little things. A lot of the crew had crazy little cameos in it. One of the producers plays a guy getting pulled out of his car. Dog, who's the gangster who likes to rob drug dealers like Omar. He pulls the guy out of the car and steals it. That was one of the producers, the executive producer. The guy who, when they have a flashback of the Baptist drowning a guy to show that that's why he's called the Baptist, that was actually the cinematographer. See, very, very, everybody plays multiple roles. That's how you do it when you're kind of on a low-budget film. One little funny thing, there's a lot of scenes from pubs where people are watching soccer matches. One of the soccer matches, there's a voiceover talking about this player and that player, and they use the names Guy Ritchie, who is the director, and Matthew Vaughn, who is the producer of this movie, as if they were two of the soccer players. Little things that they do, the little touches. Sadly, I told you Sting is in this. He does not sing. He doesn't bust into Don't Stand So Close or anything like that. I enjoy this movie a lot. I find Guy Ritchie kind of refreshing and fun. One thing about this movie I have to warn you about. If you're not British, there's a lot of Cockney slang, which may lose you from time to time, so just hold on and do your best. You know what I'm saying? Currently, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is 76% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It is quite good. It is still streaming instantly on Netflix, so rush out and see it. I enjoy all their movies. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed Snatch. I enjoyed, obviously, the Sherlock Holmes movies. I thought those were both great. I also enjoyed another movie called Rock and Rolla, which has Gerard Butler and Idris Elba. See, that's how they do. Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie is also kind of famous for being married to Madonna for a short period of time, which is why she had that kind of crazy quasi-British accent as well. So there you have that. Like I said, it is still streaming instantly on Netflix, so rush out and see it. It's crime, but really it isn't anything too violent. There's a lot of implied suggestion of violence to come, but there's really not much shown. So it's not something that you have to cover your eyes, which oftentimes is the case with Quentin Tarantino's movies. I've often said Tarantino is great, but there's always one or two scenes that are so violent that it takes literally 5% or 10% of how much I enjoy it away. Just my opinion, okay? So you have that. Next week, I'm going to go back to the comedy genre. We're going to be doing the John Candy, Dan Aykroyd classic, Great Outdoors. It is streaming instantly on Netflix, so rush out and see it and let me know what you think. You can always reach me on Twitter at KD9575. Go ahead and go to our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club, and visit us on our page on YouTube. Kevin D, that's me. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like it, and don't forget to spread the word. Tell all the homies, won't you? As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote, and here it is. A minute ago, this was the safest job in the world. Now it's starting to sound like a bad day in Bosnia. So there it is. For a minute, I thought about doing a crazy British accent, but I took a pass, so you can thank me for that later. Thank you for joining us. Next week we'll be doing the Great Outdoors. Don't forget to spread the word and be well.